programs. Jack Snow, KSD, KFNS, KSD-AM. How many stations are you guys on?
Every one that'll take us.
WIBV later, maybe?
Yeah, well, you never know. I think we're about 30 in the stable, or 35 in terms of affiliates so far for Sunday ball games. So it's going okay.
Jack, it's a pleasure to have you back on.
Pleasure's mine.
We had you on in the Ram preview at Macomb, Illinois, and that was a very fun experience up there.
Good.
Did you enjoy that?
I do. I always enjoy working with the young people, and obviously you two guys are very young, so we're going to have a good time.
Oh, come on. We're just, no.
You just what?
We're getting there.
We're getting on.
I can get my ID sometime soon.
You'll be fine.
I'll be fine. You know, the best part, I listen to you guys as much as I can, and the best part of the pregame analysis yesterday was the reason we should beat the Falcons is because their coach's name is a gal.
You heard that?
I love that. June Jones.
That's a true test. I said the reason we should beat them, if you go back and you look at this ball club, at the start of the season they had a quarterback with two first names, Jeff, George, and their head coach was named, his first name was after a woman, June. So with stats like that and credentials like that, we should win.
Let's get to the bare facts of the game. They did win. It was pretty ugly, though, and as usual, they come out in the second half. Nothing there.
Yeah, we had a decent lead at halftime. I think it was 24-10 at half, and we wound up winning the ball game 34-27. We let them back in the game. It's something that we've done that a lot this year. Against Green Bay, it was the same. Against Chicago, you know, we were in good shape at halftime. Against I think it was Carolina, we were ahead at half, and we let it get out of control. Our guys just haven't yet to develop that killer instinct.
Yeah, it is a young team, and that's what worries me about Rich Brooks coming back. This team does not yet know how to win, and interested to get your thoughts on Rich Brooks coming back. Does he have the coaching ability to teach these young kids who have obviously game-breaking potential? There's a lot of talent on offense, and that was shown off in Atlanta. Does the coaching staff, as is, have the ability to teach these kids how to win and not just how to make big plays here and there?
Rich Brooks was on Tommy Prothrow's staff back in 1971 and 72 for the then Los Angeles Rams, and I was a player then. So I go way back with Rich Brooks. Prothrow had some problems. He had signed a 3-year contract. He was released after 2 because he just had a very difficult time of relating to the players. And I think that's part of Rich Brooks' problem. He has a difficult time getting inside their heads, because that's the key today in professional sports, to get inside the heads of these guys to motivate them, because money is such a big factor. You've got to get other ways to motivate these guys. Whether he will return or not, that's not up to me. I don't know. We are young. There's no question of that. We have 5 rookies that have started for us on offense at one time. Anytime you do that, you've got to go with the flow, so to speak, in that they're going to make mistakes, they're going to screw up, but they're also going to give you some big plays, which enhances the outlook for them for the future. So as we've come along with Banks and Kennison, Ernie Conwell's had some good ball games before he went out. Moore, Derek Harrison, we've got some good young kids, but we still should be a little bit more productive, I think, than we have been.
So do you think, I mean, there's going to be a lot of things going on in the off season here, and a lot of people say, well, Rich Brooks deserves another year since they're so young. But some of the moves, the play yesterday, and I always pick out a play during a game, and yesterday it was when there was 50 seconds left, and he takes the knees to the ground. Then the Falcons go ahead and take the timeout, so they get the ball. Conceivably, it could have been 24-17 when they should have been leading 24-3 going into the locker room.
Right.
He talks about wanting to put teams away early, and that would have been a perfect time. I mean, he had it halfway. You know, he could have done something with the ball. He didn't. He took the knees and did it conservatively. And I thought that could have been a huge change in momentum in the game if the Falcons came back, and they almost did come back. And he always talks about putting away early. That's the kind of things. I see stuff like that where, you know, maybe there's times where...
A couple of things, Brad. Number one, if I'm not mistaken, the possession before then, we had thrown an interception. So that's sitting in the head coach's mind. We've got the ball at our end of the field. I'm an offensive guy. I've been an offensive guy all my life. So from my standpoint, hey, let's see if we can get one big play. But I know where he's coming from, the conservative nature. A thing that I thought, you know, it's fun to second-guess the coaching staff every Monday morning, because we're all Monday morning quarterbacks. But when we chose to go on 4th down, instead of kicking the field goal from about 38 yards out, which Slowmiller, I believe, is 4 or 5 from that distance, that would have given us 3 more points. So in my feeling is, don't ever come away with nothing. Come away with something, even if it's 3 points. So what you're saying, there's some truth or some validity in that, but, you know, you look at you look at Atlanta too, because what they did is they wasted a timeout. They lost I think about 17 seconds off the clock when they could have called a timeout and did not. Granted, it came down to the last play of the game with 1 second on the clock and they lost it, but still, you sit back and it's easy to do that in the heat of battle with the crowd. Even there's only 25,000 of them screaming and all the noise and all the stuff going on around you. Sometimes you've got to really be structured in that you really plan ahead. A good coach will always plan for the play after this one. What happens if this works? We'll do this. What happens if it doesn't work? We'll do this. You always got to be 1 or 2 plays ahead. A great example of that was probably Whitey Herzog as a baseball manager.
He's about 5 innings ahead.
Right, exactly.
And you talk about planning ahead. It seems like halftime always kills the Rams in games, even whether they win or lose. Like the Carolina game here at the Dome,
right.
Played a great first half. Weren't even out on the field in the second half. We weren't embarrassed by the score, but if you were at the game or you watched it, the Panthers had the game in check the full second half. And against the Falcons here, a lot of mix-ups with the quarterback fumbles, bad play calling every now and again, and the second half really kills the Rams every week, and that's another sign of a young team and maybe a coach that doesn't plan ahead. Not just a coach, but a coaching staff, an offensive game plan. Right. And the Rams, they're not the same team in the second half. They've played with some good teams in the first half, but then halftime seems to just kill the rally and the energy.
Well, what's so critical too is do your guys, does the staff, can they adjust? Can they make the adjustments at halftime? And our staff, the Ram staff, has come under a lot of criticism that they have not made the necessary adjustments. And so at points throughout the season up to this point is, they're not that exciting. But if you stop and really look at it, you're exciting, things work well when the players execute. You can have the greatest game plan going in, but if they don't execute, if it's an overthrown ball or if it's a drop pass or a guy fumbles, you don't coach those things. Last year when we got off to such a tremendous start, our guys were hot, everything worked, the trick plays worked, it was fantastic. This year we've had some key plays, some what I call gadget plays, but if you got to have the people to carry them out, and if they're not carried out, now you're sitting there with a 3rd and 22 rather than a 1st and 10 on their 10. This game is goofy. It's really goofy.
Let's look at the player personnel. The first guy I want to talk about is Tony Banks. At the beginning of the season when they got Walsh, I was all for getting Tony Banks in there as early as possible, as were most of the fans. And I still am. I know a lot of people might be down on him because he did set the record in fumbles this year. But his arm, like they've said before, you cannot teach an arm like that. And he's got some jet receivers with Kennison and Bruce. And I don't know if it's his hands are too small or what it is, but I do think that get him a quarterback coach. I've said this for about 5 or 6 weeks now. Get him somebody who can work with him on snaps and other things. I think he's going to be a great quarterback.
You look at the size of my hands now, and you look at Tony Banks' hands. He's got larger hands than I have. And I caught 350 passes and 45 touchdowns with these little teeny things. And it's not so much the size, it's what you do with them, how you work with it. How did you carry the ball? Do you carry it loosely? Do you tuck it away? Those are basic fundamentals that you've got to work on in camp and constantly strive to improve. If you'll notice when Banks in the early part of the season, once he would break the pocket and start to run, he would try to get back into the field of play and try and nail somebody. Well, he doesn't do that now. If you watch the game yesterday, twice out of bounds, he's close to the sideline, he's gone, he's out of bounds. Well, that's a sign of maturing. Getting in a fight with Alonzo Spellman 2 weeks ago, that's immaturity. You never pick a fight with a defensive lineman. That's number one. He will learn that. But I think down the road, years to come, I think he's going to establish himself and be better than a good quarterback. I think he can, because he can throw the ball. He's got a rifle for an arm.
I really like it. As I like Banks, as you say, the whole offense. Really, if you're a coaching candidate sitting at home, and Joe Gibbs has been bandied about, coming into the situation, you don't have to wait for the general manager to put a good team on the field. There's a lot of young talent, and with the emergence of Banks and Kennison and the fullbacks that you spoke of, and Ernie Conwell, some coaching candidate at home that may be too high priced or doesn't want to get back into coaching may take a second look at the St. Louis Rams because they're not a typical 5 and whatever their record is now, 5 and 10.
Yes.
They're not a typical 5 and 10 team to take over for the next year because there's a lot to already build on, and the defense was supposed to be better than it was this year. So I like to talk about Joe Gibbs, but who knows? He turned down Carolina. I'm not sure if he'd come to another Midwestern town, St. Louis, but
he's into racing. He's into auto racing.
Yes, he is.
And he likes it. The coaching life for a head coach and his assistants is very stressful. I was in it. I was the receivers coach in 1982 for the Rams, and it was a situation where by 5:30 in the morning I'm out of the house and I don't get home till midnight. because you're breaking down film, you're watching film, you're scouting, and that's all in addition to actually on the field working with your kids. So it's a 20-hour-a-day job, and you never feel like you've covered everything. You've got to turn over every rock, every possibility, every probability, every scenario. You try to, visualize in your mind's eye exactly what's going to happen on Sunday. Did we cover that? Did we cover this? What happens? I mean, it's a tough job, and it's getting tougher each year, and the reason is because of the money involved. Television is paying so much money, and they're almost to a point now where they're dictating how you play the game, when you take the timeouts, which they do dictate, and it's just tough. It's a tough business, and no great coaches are sitting at home waiting to be brought back, with the exception maybe of a Mike Ditka. Because I think Gibbs is gone in terms of wanting to get back into the NFL. Bill Walsh from San Francisco would like to get back, but I think as a general manager, not as an on-field coach. So the true talent pool right now are the assistants that are out there as coordinators, offense and or defense. So there are some highly respected, highly talented guys out there right now.
Hypothetically, if Rich Brooks does not come back next year, and I've said this name 10 weeks in a row now, Bill Parcells is the guy that I know that people are talking about him maybe using us as a leverage tool between the Giants or the Jets, but I think you throw whoever, if you're going to get a big name, I think you throw the house at him, because the Rams are the richest franchise in the NFL, and they have the money to spend.
We are?
They're the 7th most richest sports franchise.
I don't doubt that.
And they are the most, over Dallas, over everybody. So I think and that'll tell the fans that they are moving to win. I mean, the fans may have this thought now that the Rams may not want to win. If they bring in somebody like Parcells or a big-name guy, I think that will really prove to the fans, and they'll make them come back.
We can't, we meaning the franchise administration, John Shaw, Jay Zygmunt, and Stan Kroenke, we cannot talk with anybody that's currently under contract with a team or currently involved in their season. We can't talk until the playoffs are through. Bill Parcells' name obviously is out there. Pete Carroll, the San Francisco 49ers, he's out there. Dennis Green, some seem to think that maybe Dennis Green will leave Minnesota. Lou Holtz will go to the Vikings, and then and Dennis Green is a good coach. Mike Ditka, everybody talks about Ditka. That's the guy that I would have liked to have seen come here 3 years ago. But then again, he brings some things with him that you don't know if you want to carry. I mean, it's tough. But we had a chance to get Mike Holmgren a couple of years ago, and we did not, and he went to Green Bay. And so it's, sometimes you just roll the dice with some of these guys. So you've got to really research, do your homework, get all the recommendations you can, and then put your eggs in that basket with that guy. And you've also got to understand that the stronger the head coach you're going to get, you probably want to get a little less strong general manager, football personnel type guy. If you're going to bring in a young coach, basically a rookie head coach, then you can get somebody who's a little stronger as a GM. So you've got to, you're working on a marriage here. So it's more to it than just going out and hire some guy and hiring this guy, because it's got to be a real positive working relationship. And sometimes that doesn't happen.
And an offensive coordinator position under whoever is the head coach, in my opinion, is very important too, with all the talent on offense that we keep speaking of. Somebody that can implement the newer West Coast offense, if you will, because the Rams have the tools to run that.
Yeah, and a name that has not been talked about a lot, but a guy who's doing a great job as a coordinator is Gary Kubiak of the Denver Broncos. If you look at Kubiak, what was he? He was a backup quarterback his entire career, so a journeyman quarterback, but he knows the fundamentals. What's our biggest asset right here, right now? Tony Banks, a young quarterback who needs some, if in fact a coaching change is made. And I've watched Jack Riley work with these guys, and Jack does a pretty good job with both Jamie Martin and Tony Banks. And I know Jack would love to stay here, as all the coaches would, but that's the nature of this beast. When you get into coaching, it's only going to be for how long am I going to be here before I have to move on, and that comes with the territory.
Let's move around the NFL just a little bit and start with the NFC. Right now, there is not, I don't think, a dominant team, and if you would pick one, I would have to say Carolina, because every week they go out and win. Dallas is having trouble scoring points. Their defense is doing well. San Francisco is, you never know what they're going to do. Green Bay is always a good bet.
Green Bay. Carolina has done exceptionally well. They're currently tied with the Niners for the division lead, and they're ahead basically from a technical standpoint, but the one-loss record is the same. I think they're both, 11-4. But the Packers, to me, it's a name right now. It's a game of the number one guy, which is a Brett Favre, which is a John Elway. And you're right, Dallas is really struggling offensively, even though they have Troy Aikman. They're not scoring a lot of points. Emmitt Smith gets dinged up in the ballgame last weekend. So from that standpoint, the quarterback is your key guy. Look at the problems that Kansas City's having. I know you want to talk about the NFC, but
We can do it all.
Philadelphia, they're doing a good job there with the kid who won the Heisman a couple of years ago out of BYU. So he's filled in rather nicely. But it's still that number one guy. He's got to be your quarterback.
And both the number one guys you mentioned have one thing in common, that's home field advantage. And
Right.
Green Bay and Denver are not good places to go into and try to beat a hot team in the playoffs. And those are my two teams to watch for obvious reasons. But I agree, Brett Favre. Actually, the offensive line may be the key for Green Bay if they can establish some sort of run game, because Carolina does have the defense to stop a potent offense. And Dom Capers, in my opinion, one of the best guys at organizing a
Coach of the
defensive
year.
game plan.
Has to be the coach
Has
of the
to
year.
be, and that would be a great game. I would love to see a Carolina or Dallas in Lambeau. Green Bay always has to go somewhere to beat a team, and they can't get over that last hump. Well, now they get to host the game.
What's interesting, too, you look at the Pro Bowl selections this year, 3 of the Carolina linebackers, they're going Lamar Latham, Sam Mills, and the wise kid that we had out in L.A., Kevin Green, the long blonde. Yeah, all 3 of those guys reminiscent of the New Orleans days when in their heyday, when they were winning with defense and all of their guys went to the Pro Bowl, all 3 or 4 of those linebackers. Carolina did a smart thing. They traded and made trades and picked players in the expansion draft defensively and then drafted offensively. So and Dom Capers' idea is, hey, we win with the defense and we bring our offense along slowly and just play as error-free as we can on offense. And you look at Brett Favre, his matriculation when he first started, he was a wild, flamboyant guy. He didn't know what the game was all about, but he has really come around the last couple of years, and he is a great quarterback and going to get better.
You look at the AFC, we talked a little bit about it. I don't trust any of those teams to even come close to beating an NFC team in the Super Bowl. At the beginning of the year, everybody thought it might be wide open, but you saw what Green Bay did to Denver. Even though Elway was gone,
Elway less.
they won 41 points. I mean, the defense
Elway
was
less. Let me tell you
the defense was still out there.
Let me tell you something. If no matter whom or who Denver plays, I hope that whatever game that is, that they are behind in the fourth quarter, because they will win the game because of John Elway. I mean, the guy is remarkable. I mean, that's everybody knows that he is an outstanding fourth quarter comeback type guy, and he is. And again, with John Elway going against Green Bay, it's Elway versus Favre. It would be different than the previous game a couple of weeks ago, believe me.
Well, but when they're down in the fourth quarter, 55-7, it's hard for him to come back in the Super Bowl.
Elway will, and that ain't going to happen. They're not going to be down 55-7.
And a big difference is that game, if they meet again, it'll be at a neutral site. In the Super Bowl, I do think Green Bay would prevail if they matched up, but it would be a different ball game.
Well, but again, you look at the Denver Broncos as a team, solid running team with Terrell Davis, excellent defensive ball club. They rested some of their guys. They've got a good receiving core. Anthony Miller sitting there on the outside. The big kid Shannon Sharp, who is basically a wide receiver, but he's playing tight end, who was rested also, I think. So I mean, there's some horses on both sides of the ball for those 2 teams. But I think Denver is a very solid team offensively and defensively.
Yeah, and I think that's what the AFC representatives have lacked, is balance between offense and defense. And Denver and New England, in my mind, the top 2 contenders in the AFC, both have that. I mean, Bill Parcells, as you spoke of, coaches a great defensive game. And New England played tough with Dallas. Yeah, they've got to score a touchdown to win the game, but Dallas is still a fairly potent offense, and they held them without a touchdown. I mean, they can match up in a neutral site and possibly win, but you have to like the NFC's chances.
Guys, don't discount Pittsburgh. Bill Cowher will get those guys ready. I mean, Jerome Bettis, a little bit of an ankle injury yesterday, but they still win with a solid defense and the running game. And you don't have to be a great quarterback with a Bill Cowher team. You just don't make mistakes. And 2 examples of that. And I played against both these guys. Bart Starr, who's in the Hall of Fame, was quarterback of the Green Bay Packers. He was a good quarterback. He wasn't a Johnny Unitas. He was a good quarterback on a great football team. You look at Bob Greasy playing for the Miami Dolphins, a good quarterback on a great football team. Mark Rippon with Washington Super Bowl. He was a good quarterback on a great football team. Dan Fouts, great quarterback. Johnny Unitas, great quarterback. Okay, John Brody, great quarterback. I mean, you see the difference where I'm heading with this?
Yeah, but
I still question Tomczak, though, because at least Rippon, who may be similar to Tomczak, he had a stronger arm, but he had a great year within that year. In general, when you chronicle his career, he may be just a good quarterback, but that year,
when you ran the ball and you had the defense, you had the hogs, and a lot of play action, because that's what they're looking for, the defense, because they know you can run the ball on it, so they've got to take that first step to respect the run, and that play action will hold those backers and those corners and safeties sometimes, and then you drop back, man. It's a whole other world.
But you are making me feel young, though, saying you played with Bart Starr.
Played against him.
Wow.
Johnny Unitas.
Man, I must be young.
Norm Snead. Jim Hart. All kinds of great quarterbacks in those days, and some good quarterbacks. But it was different in those days. We were tougher.
Do you enjoy your playing days?
Oh, yeah,
had
absolutely.
To be...
Absolutely.
Is that what you wanted to do throughout your whole life? Is that what you geared yourself up to all the time?
I was a very fortunate individual. I had great help and great advice. When I was in the 8th grade, I made a decision. I wanted to do two things. I want to go to Notre Dame and be an All-American, and I want to play for the Los Angeles Rams. I wanted to do those two things. And fortunately, I had a great high school coach who helped get me into Notre Dame, and I was an All-American there. And I wound up coming back and playing for 11 years with the Los Angeles Rams. So I had no complaints. It worked out well for me.
And now you're working for them.
Now I'm working for them.
And do you enjoy the St. Louis?
St. Louis has been fantastic. The people here are genuine. I guess that's the best word I can use. Grew up in Los Angeles, so I'm well aware of what goes on out there. The greatest example I can give you is that, the first week we were here, we were in the supermarket, my wife and I shopping. People would stop by and say, "Hey, how you doing?" And I'm looking at them like, what are you after? What do you want? My wallet hanging out. Because coming from L.A., you say. But they were, no, just, how you doing? Everything's fine. They didn't know who we were. They didn't know we worked for the Rams. And that's neat. But you are the worst drivers in the world in this city.
Hey, I will attest to that. We can do a whole different show on that, Jack.
We can. Yes, we can.
Jack, it had to be mixed emotions for you then when the team moved, being a Los Angeles Ram.
Right.
On the inside, and then you moved, and it had to be exciting to see the team get the response they did, but at the same time, you're leaving something that you've wanted since you were an 8th grader.
Right. Well, when I look back at it, I spent 12 years with the ball club as a player and 1 year as a coach, and then I've been in broadcasting for them. I've been broadcasting for them for 6 years, so that's 18 years of my life that I've been with this organization. I know Georgia Frontiere very, very well. She was married to Cal Rosenblum when he took over the team way back in the early 70s, late 60s, and so I go back a long way with this franchise. I know the people. I know Todd Hewitt, who's the equipment manager. His dad, Don, was my equipment manager when I played. Little things like that. And I saw Todd grow up from the time he was 10 years old to come to camp. So from that standpoint, yeah, I mean, I know we're in St. Louis, and we are now the St. Louis Rams, but the franchise is in my blood. The most difficult thing for my wife and I when we moved to St. Louis was to leave our granddaughters. We have two little granddaughters who were, at the time, they were 2 and 3. So we bring them out here for 3 or 4 weeks, so that helps ease the burden. But I want to be a part of it. New team, new city, almost like an expansion team, even though we weren't, and it's worked out well so far, other than the 1-loss record.
Jack, you and Gary Bender, it's just a pleasure to listen to. It is just a great, you guys do a great job, and I love listening to it. Thank you very much for coming out today.
Pleasure's mine anytime.
We'd love having you out. Now we're doing Jack's favorite portion of any sports show on any TV or radio station, trivia. Because you know that Jack Snow is a trivia fan.
Yeah, right.
Our trivia question for the week is, who was the last team to be undefeated this season? If you know that, call our hotline, win some free stuff. Jack Snow is granting us a coffee cup this week for the prize.
I love it.
No, well, we'll give you something good. Jack, once again, thanks a lot for coming out.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for having me.